woman yields back. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Torres, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. President Donald Trump has been asserting among the most aggressive and expansive claims of presidential power that we've seen in our nation's history. He's taken the unitary executive theory to new extremes. He's claiming to have the authority to defund whatever agency he wishes, to abolish whatever agency he wishes, and to fire whomever he wishes, even if it means violating an act of Congress. Mr. Chairman, suppose for a moment the president were to ignore the congressional statute that establishes the independence of the Federal Reserve. What economic consequences would result from the Fed losing its independence?
I think research over many years in many jurisdictions shows that some degree of independence is very important in keeping inflation under control. And the connection is obvious. If politicians are going to want to be reelected and things like that, they're not going to be focused on the longer term. We have the mandate to remain separate from all of that, to stay out of all of that, so that we can just focus on, not on election cycles or helping or hurting any political party or politician, but just on serving the public as a whole. That is essential, and it's uniform, I think, across all advanced economy central banks.
Much like the Bureau of Fiscal Service, the Federal Reserve has highly sensitive payment systems. President Trump and Secretary Bessent granted Elon Musk and his team of outsiders access to the central payment system of the federal government, a system that is often described as America's checkbook. Would you, as the Federal Reserve Chair, ever grant a team of outsiders access to the Fed's central payment system without sufficient vetting and sufficient security clearance?
Well, no, but let's remember, we're the Treasury's fiscal agent. Everything we do is under their direction, and there are Treasury payment systems, and then there's our side of the wall, which is the actual payment to the recipients, and so we control access to that very carefully.
Right. The Treasury issues the payments, and then you process them.
They order us to pay someone, and we just pay. We don't have any. We don't question payments. We just make the payments, and we control access to those payment systems very carefully.
And what would be the danger of lightly granting access to the Fed's payment system to outsiders without sufficient vetting? Like, what could go wrong?
Well, the reason why we're so careful about it is just, for one thing, the possibility of mistakes and someone coming in and changing the code and things like that. So we have very careful access. Another one is just you open it up to more cyber risk and things like that. So I mean, I think all really important computer programming is subject to very careful access restrictions, and we're no exception.
Right. So you believe, as I do, that granting an insufficiently vetted team of outsiders access to the payment systems of the Treasury or the Fed would radically raise the risk of a cyber breach at the hands of foreign adversaries like China and Russia?
So we're talking hypothetically here. I can tell you that is not something that's happened relative to. We can speak to the systems that the Treasury has asked us to operate on their behalf, and that has not happened in those systems.
I represent one of the poorest congressional districts in America. I have cash-strapped constituents who pay exorbitant fees simply to transfer their own money, often to loved ones abroad. Access to FedWire could play a role in radically reducing the cost of remittances and payments for the lowest income Americans. What is your position on expanding FedWire access for the purpose of reducing the cost of remittances and payments?
So we do, FedWire is really between banks. These are very large wholesale transactions. It's one of the world's most important, if not the most important, financial market utility. I don't think we're looking to open it up to retail customers. I think, faster retail payments and particularly cross-border payments are a subject of a lot of work in the international sphere, and I think we all understand it's important to lower the costs and the risks of those.
The commercial real estate, do you feel that continues to be a ticking time bomb within the financial system? What's your sense of?
I wouldn't say that. So we've been saying, and I think it's still true, that this is a problem that's been with us and it's going to be with us for a while. If I can say something modestly constructive, it doesn't seem to be getting worse.
Okay.
So there are a lot of embedded losses, and they're just going to need to be realized. So we're working with financial institutions to make sure they have a plan and understand their losses and can manage them.
I see my time has expired. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida.
The gentleman yields back. The representative from New York, Mr. Torres, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel we in Congress should neither romanticize nor demonize emerging technologies like blockchain. Like all technologies, blockchain has constructive uses and destructive uses, and I feel like our mission should be to develop a regulatory framework that maximizes the best uses and minimizes the worst uses. Because without a bipartisan agreement, we will continue to have a dangerously deregulated status quo that benefits offshore, over-leveraged, deregulated actors. And for me, a bipartisan agreement would be a fundamental improvement upon the status quo. I want to follow up on Congressman Rose's questions on remittances. I represent the Bronx, which is one of the poorest counties in America. I have constituents who pay exorbitant fees simply to transfer their own money to their loved ones abroad, whether it be Mexico or the Dominican Republic. My first question would be for Mr. Ponte. PayPal is obviously one of the largest payment processors in the world. What is the cost of transferring money via the conventional payment system versus the crypto or stablecoin payment system?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. The cost of sending money overseas varies widely by corridor, but information coming from sources like the World Bank would put the average cost in the range of around 6%, with a target of, I think that the desired target for the World Bank is to bring that down to 3%. But the current average, I think, is in the range of 6%. When you're doing those transactions on stablecoins today, if you're doing that purely from a stablecoin wallet to a stablecoin wallet, depending on the protocol that you're using, it can be as low as 1 cent per transaction in some of the most efficient wallets. That still would not address part of the complexity, because then you would need to explain to the person on the other side, they need to get a crypto wallet, they need to find an exchange, so there is still some friction there. But we are finding experiences that combine fiat and stablecoins for the benefit of the user. For instance,
I just want to simplify it. So the average cost of remittances is 6%. The World Bank has a sustainability development goal of 3%. What is your cost with stablecoin?
When somebody on Zoom, our remittance product, we have enabled stablecoin as a funding instrument. When somebody sends a remittance funded by POUSD, we don't charge any transfer fees. So the transfer fee that is charged to the user is zero. There is still a component on the Forex spread, depending on where that corridor
Okay,
goes.
so it's zero when it comes to the transaction fees, and then if you factor in the spread for the foreign currency exchange rate, what would it be?
That would vary. I would need to come back to you for follow-up.
Is it less than 3%?
In many cases, it will be less than 3%.
We're living in a time when foreign demand for U.S. stablecoins is on the, foreign demands for U.S. treasuries is on the decline. And it appears to me that stablecoin issuers are becoming the largest purchaser of U.S. treasuries. It would seem to me that the proliferation of stablecoins can dramatically expand the market for U.S. treasuries. What impact would that have on the cost of U.S. debt?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. U.S. treasuries are definitely being established as one of the assets that are being preferred for reserves of stablecoin, and as the market grows, that will undoubtedly drive demand, especially as American issuers are able to issue more here inside of the U.S. and they're able to ride that increase in the market. I don't have an opinion on what that would make for the cost of debt of the United States, but definitely is one of the aspects where net demand for treasuries could grow.
Or it seems to me economics would dictate that growing demand for U.S. treasuries would lower the cost of U.S. debt. But, Mr. Massad, do you feel stablecoins should be regulated in the same manner as banks?
Well, not quite in the same manner, but with some similar principles, such as some of those in the Stable Act, like full reserves and capital and liquidity requirements, risk management measures, and so forth. I mean, I've been calling for this for years because not just to address the
You would
risks.
concede that, a stablecoin issuer that has no fractionalization of reserves and no
Correct.
lending
Agreed. They're
function is
not creating money.
qualitatively different from a bank,
They're not creating money.
and
I
therefore
would
should
agree
have
with
its own regulatory framework.
that. Absolutely.
Okay. I see my time is about to expire, so I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Governor Kathy Hochul has been holding press conferences, issuing press releases, posting videos, assuring the public that she feels the pain of New Yorkers struggling with the crushing cost of living. But left unmentioned in all the political grandstanding is the governor's own role in inflicting the pain in the first place. So the Public Service Commission, which has approved massive rate hikes far beyond the rate of inflation, is ultimately a creature of the governor. The Public Service Commissioners answer to the governor who appoints them. So even though Governor Hochul claims to be a champion of utility consumers, the Hochul rate hikes tell a different story. Governor Hochul's Public Service Commission has approved a cumulative rate increase of 39.4% on the National Grid customers of New York City. During the 3-year rate hike, a National Grid customer will pay a total rate increase of $1,431.30. Even after the 3-year rate increase, a National Grid customer will forever pay $742.56 more per year on top of any new increases. Governor Kathy Hochul's Public Service Commission has not only approved excessive rate increases against the National Grid customers of New York City, it has also approved excessive gas delivery charges against the Con Ed customers of New York City. The Con Ed charges are so excessive that the cost of gas delivery has become more expensive than the gas itself. Con Ed charges as much as 200% more for gas delivery than National Grid. How can that be? These rate increases are unsustainable. Working class New Yorkers cannot afford them. Yet Governor Hochul's Public Service Commission insists on imposing them. There is an imbalance of power between utilities and working class New Yorkers. The utilities have infinitely more lawyers and lobbyists than working class New Yorkers do. What is needed now more than ever is an independent, fully empowered office of the consumer advocate, which would level the playing field for working class New Yorkers. Governor Hochul has a history of vetoing legislation that would establish an independent office of the consumer advocate. And when asked about her opposition, she has deceptively described the legislation as quote unquote duplicative. That claim couldn't be further from the truth. Unlike New York's Utility Intervention Unit, which has limited utility, an independent and fully empowered office of the consumer advocate would have the authority and the autonomy to issue subpoenas, conduct investigations, and initiate litigation on behalf of working class New Yorkers. An empowered and effective consumer advocate needs all of those authorities. Yet New York's Utility Intervention Unit, despite its best efforts, has none of them. An independent office of the consumer advocate would represent a seat at the table for the more than 7 million ratepayers in the state of New York.
Is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No technology should be judged solely by its abuses or worst possible uses. Every technology has constructive uses and destructive uses, and crypto is no exception. Take as an example the automobile, which has a death toll of more than 40,000 Americans every year. The proper legislative response to the automobile is not to ban it, it's not to sabotage it, it's to regulate it, it's to make it safer. And as far as I'm concerned, the proper role of Congress is not to sabotage digital asset transactions, but to make them safer, to strike a careful balance between financial stability and innovation. There is a narrative that crypto and blockchain have no use cases beyond criminality, no benefit, that these technologies are nothing more than a fraud and a grift and a scam. Right? That's the caricature of crypto that often pervades mainstream media coverage. And so I have a few questions about the use cases of crypto. I'll start with Stripe. Does blockchain, and these are yes or no questions, does blockchain have the power to enable better, cheaper, and faster payments and remittances?
Yes.
Would you consider that a beneficial use case?
Yes.
For Paxos, there are billions of people in the global south who lack access to a stable currency, whose countries are plagued by hyperinflation. Does blockchain have the power to afford those impoverished people access to a stable currency and protection from runaway inflation?
Yes.
Would you consider that a beneficial use case?
Yes.
For Stripe, does blockchain have the power to exponentially expand the market for U.S. treasuries and lower the cost of U.S. debt?
That's certainly what it looks like today.
Would you consider that a beneficial use case?
Very much so.
Bank of New York, does blockchain have the power to tokenize real-world assets and facilitate custodial banking?
Yes, it does.
Would you consider that a beneficial use case?
Absolutely.
Now, Bank of New York is the bank of Alexander Hamilton. It's the oldest bank in the United States, the ultimate expression of the traditional financial system. I imagine you're obsessed with regulatory compliance. As the oldest bank in the world with more than $50 trillion in assets under custody and administration, would the Bank of New York waste its valuable time and resources and reputation on a technology that had no use cases beyond criminality? Does that sound remotely plausible?
No, we would not.
Now, tokenization is becoming the future of the global financial system. And as more and more assets become tokenized and more financial transactions become blockchain-based, does the lack of regulatory clarity around blockchain put the US at risk of losing its financial competitiveness? Bank of New York.
Yes, it does.
And if the United States had gotten internet regulation wrong, do you think the United States would have gone on to dominate the internet-based financial system that eventually emerged, Stripe?
Very hard to say, of course, but quite plausibly not.
So it would stand to reason if the United States gets blockchain regulation wrong, do you think the US will go on to dominate a blockchain-based financial system that might ultimately emerge?
No, I don't think it will, and we've already seen some evidence that if the U.S. doesn't move here, the nexus of activity will move elsewhere.
So as far as I'm concerned, in order for the United States to remain the superpower of the world, we must embrace emerging technologies. We must harness the power of emerging technologies to make America more productive at home and more competitive abroad. And any policy that has a chilling effect on experimentation with new technology could erode American competitiveness. I had a special hatred for SAB 121 because it essentially had the effect of prohibiting an institution like Bank of New York from even experimenting with blockchain technology. And I feel we in Congress should have the intellectual humility to recognize that digital assets will develop use cases that none of us can foresee. And since there are limits to what we can know about the future, it's incumbent upon us as policymakers to foster a flexible and nimble regulatory environment that allows for the development of a new technology and allows for experimentation with an emerging technology. Telling an institution like Bank of New York that you cannot even experiment with blockchain technology is the worst thing we can do for American competitiveness. What are your thoughts?
I appreciate the point, and I think it's important that we continue to innovate within the safety and soundness of the financial system. We need to do both, right? We need to innovate and we need to protect the system. And absolutely, we should have the the clarity of rules to enable us to do that. And we should welcome competition, right? That competition drives our economy and enables the right types of outcomes for all consumers in the marketplace.
I see my time has expired. Thank you.
The gentleman from New York, Mr. Torres, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During so-called Liberation Day, Donald Trump imposed tariffs on territories populated not by humans, but by penguins. He imposed tariffs on countries with which the United States runs a trade surplus, not a trade deficit. He imposed tariffs on products that cannot be produced domestically, which means a higher cost for American consumers without any benefit to American manufacturers. He imposed tariffs on impoverished nations like Lesotho, which cannot afford to buy as much from us as we buy from them. If President Joe Biden had put in place these absurd tariffs, every single Republican, without exception, would have condemned his trade policy as the height of incompetence. And you, Mr. Besant, would have joined that chorus of criticism. There's no doubt in my mind. But swap out Biden's name for Trump's, and suddenly the moral outrage from Republicans vanishes like magic. I have a simple yes or no question. Do you think excessive taxation undermines the competitiveness of American manufacturing?
Yes, sir.
Now, the Trump tariff regime is a breeding ground for the excessive taxation of American manufacturing. Consider as an example Intel's manufacturing of CPUs. Intel sources foreign components, which is subject to the first layer of taxation. It then manufactures the CPUs in the United States before exporting it to China, which will face a second layer of taxation. And finally, China will export the CPU back to the United States, where it will face a third layer of taxation. Taxation upon taxation upon taxation of American manufacturing goods. Do you think that kind of compounding taxation of American manufacturing goods like Intel CPU will strengthen or weaken American manufacturing?
Sir, I just want to be clear. You're saying that taxes raise cost.
I'm sorry?
Sir, you're saying that taxes raise costs.
Taxing the intermediate goods that go into a manufactured product raise costs, yes.
You're saying that taxes are inflationary.
Taxes are inflation, yes.
Good, then we should cut taxes.
In the context of tariffs, yes.
Then we should cut taxes, and you should join the...
Can you answer my question
Republicans
about the tariffs?
in the tax bill.
Can you answer my questions about the tariffs?
I'm not sure I understand.
CPU's Intel would face Intel CPU would face 3 levels of taxation: the taxes on the foreign components, the U.S. taxes, and the Chinese taxes, or the Chinese tariffs. Do you think that kind of compounded taxation hinders or helps American manufacturing?
I think that strategic American manufacture is very important, like Intel, and I think we have to bring that back to the U.S.
Do you think taxing intermediate goods that go inside American manufactured products helps or hinders manufacturing?
I believe that, as the Intel example you give, we have to bring these strategic industries back to the U.S.
We're not going to bring every component. A Boeing aircraft, 747, has 6 million components. There is no universe in which we're going to manufacture all 6 million components in the United States. And so if you impose a tax on those foreign components, you are hindering the manufacturing of Boeing 747 here in the United States. Do you even acknowledge that?
I acknowledge that the supply chains, they are wide, but we've also, for the automakers, we have given an exemption.
I'm not asking about the automakers. I'm asking about Boeing aircraft. Let me move on. Critical minerals are essential to the military defense of the United States. China controls almost all of the world's rare earth mining and almost all of the world's critical mineral processing and refining. The Trump administration has chosen to wage a total trade war with China without first building a critical mineral supply chain here at home. Right? Just like it would be foolish to enter a car race without enough fuel in the tank, or enter a weightlifting competition without sufficient strength to lift the weights. It seems equally foolish to wage an all-out trade war on China without a domestic critical mineral supply chain, breaking China's strongest chokehold over the United States. The CCP's chokehold on critical minerals and rare earth elements is a precondition for winning the trade war against China. Do you agree with that?
I believe that we have to bring the rare earth, as you correctly said, processing back, or not even back to the U.S. We have to.
It's not only processing, it's rare earth mining as well. And it's critical mineral processing and refining.
Strategic minerals.
And the weaponization of critical minerals against the United States is the opposite of making America safe again.
Rare earths are not that rare. Processing is rare.
The mining is rare too. We have a insufficient mining industry here in the United States, and you know that.
Good, then I hope you'll join us in the deregulation of many of these onerous mining requirements.
I think my time has expired.
With that, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Torres, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chair Powell, you spoke about elevated uncertainty and declining sentiment in the U.S. economy. Do you believe, as I do, that the economy would be in a better position but for the elevated uncertainty and declining sentiment created by the Trump tariffs?
I don't want to be criticizing policies. I will say uncertainty has...
Is it fair that it's fair to say that the policy created uncertainty?
It's fair to say uncertainty was very elevated, but it's also fair to say that uncertainty has actually come down since the peak, if you will, in April. I think there's a different feeling out there now than there was 2 months ago, and it's more constructive feeling on the part of businesses, which you must be feeling too.
But it's higher than it otherwise would be in the absence of the Liberation Day tariffs. To what extent was the elevated uncertainty a factor in keeping the Fed from cutting interest rates?
So I think that's part of it. The truth is, we were cutting rates, and we paused in January and haven't cut rates since. And really, the reason is that we, like other forecasters, do expect a fairly substantial wave of price increases to come through to the consumer and to measured inflation. We've always said The timing, amount, and persistence of all that is highly uncertain. I think we hadn't expected to see it until now. We now begin to think it is time for us to be seeing that, and if we don't see it, that will matter. If we do see it, that will matter. So we've just taken a cautious approach to not moving our policy rate until we have a little more confidence about the size and likely effects of that.
Chair Powell, following the so-called Liberation Day tariffs in early April, we saw something the U.S. economy had not seen in decades, a flight not to the U.S. dollar as a safe haven, but away from it. And since President Trump's inauguration, the U.S. dollar index has fallen by nearly 10%, marking the worst first-half performance for the dollar since 1986. At the same time, Japan, America's largest sovereign creditor, just saw the worst 20-year Japanese government bond auction since the 1980s, raising fears that it could reduce its holdings of U.S. treasuries. Given these developments, do you believe, as I do, that the U.S. may be transitioning from a period of dollar dominance to a period of dollar decline?
Well, let me say, the Fed does not have responsibility for the dollar. That's really the Treasury. But
I'm asking for your analysis.
I wouldn't make that statement. No, I think it's things have been volatile. The markets are digesting things, and I think the Treasury market's been fine by many measures. The dollar is still
You feel the safe haven status of the dollar is as strong as it's ever been?
I think the dollar is still the number one safe haven currency, and I don't think it's, I would say these narratives of decline are premature and a bit overdone.
I want to ask about the debt. The big, beautiful bill would have ugly consequences for our nation's finances, adding more than $2 trillion to the debt if the provisions are temporary, and far more if made permanent. We've accumulated World War II levels of debt, not during a world war, but during peacetime. Interest payments on the debt have become the largest item in the federal budget after Social Security, surpassing Medicaid, Medicare, and military defense. To what extent is the U.S. at risk of entering a debt spiral in which rising interest costs lead to ever larger deficits, which in turn lead to ever larger interest costs?
Yeah, I think that the U.S. federal budget is on an unsustainable path. The debt is not at an unsustainable level right now, but the path is not sustainable, and I think the sooner we deal with that, and by we I mean you, the better.
The Trump administration has championed the unitary executive theory, the notion that the president has absolute power over all entities that wield executive power. That theory, if taken to an extreme, would all but abolish the independence of the Federal Reserve. If monetary policy became nothing more than an expression of presidential will and whims, what havoc would that wreak on the U.S. economy?
I think that independent central banks have proven over time to be a valuable and critical institutional practice. And I think that is because basically advanced economy democracies around the world have given their central banks a degree of operational independence. They assign them goals. You go do this and you stick to those things, but we'll let you, you may choose the means of achieving those goals. It's called instrument independence, but not goal independence. And I think it's a very
Gentleman's time has expired.
Very important practice.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes.
Please welcome U.S. Representative Ritchie Torres. Please welcome to the podium the Chief Executive Officer of Lincoln Hospital, Cristina Contreras. Please stand and join me in welcoming the 57th Governor of the great state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Lincoln Hospital. Good morning. I want to begin by thanking our Congressman Ritchie Torres for his continued advocacy and support for Lincoln Hospital and the South Bronx. Thank you for always making sure our community is seen and heard. I also want to thank our Governor, Kathy Hochul, for being with us today. Governor, you are always visible and accessible. Thank you for choosing Lincoln to stand with New Yorkers during this fight to protect health care. For our patients, our staff, and the South Bronx community, your presence here today tells them that they matter, that their families matter, that their future, their outcomes matter. At a time when so many are worried about what these cuts to health care could mean, you bring hope and strength. Finally, I want to thank our President and CEO, Dr. Mitch Katz, for always standing with all of us in health and hospital system and our communities. Yes. I'm so proud to stand here today representing this hospital because Lincoln is more than just a hospital. It is the heart of the South Bronx. We have the busiest emergency room in New York City and one of the top trauma centers in the country. Every day, families come to us, families who are scared, families who are struggling, and they place their trust in us. These cuts are not just numbers on a page. They are people's lives. That's why today matters. By standing together, we are sending a message. Lincoln is not alone, and neither are the people we served. With Governor Hochul, Dr. Katz, and Congressman Torres by our side, we are stronger. We will keep fighting for affordable quality health care so that every family in the South Bronx has a place to turn when they need care. And now it's my great honor to introduce the 57th governor of the great state of New York, the Honorable Governor Kathy Hochul.
Thank you, Christina. Christina Contreras, thank you for hosting us, number one. But to all the members of the medical facility, the staff, the doctors, the nurses, support staff, administration, I just want to tell you how grateful we are that all of you have dedicated your lives to bettering the health and outcomes for people of the South Bronx and all over. And to be the busiest ER in New York City, but the third busiest in the United States of America, is something that we should salute. Let's give them all a round of applause. Cassandra Howell, our Chief Operating Officer, I want to thank her. You'll also be hearing from one of our constituents here, a Medicaid recipient, Ms. Martinez, who will be joining us in a few moments. All my partners in government, state officials have been recognized. I see you so often. City Council member, we have Gail Brewer here, I noticed, probably some others, our City Council members, my administration, many people from my administration are here, and all my partners. Also an individual who's a tireless fighter for the South Bronx and beyond. You are so blessed to have represent you in the powerful halls of Washington in Congress. Your Congressman, Ritchie Torres. Let's give him another round of applause. Now, I just have a few observations. And I'm from Buffalo. You're from the Bronx. Let's just talk straight. What Republicans in Washington have done through the big, ugliest bill I've ever seen is literally screwing New Yorkers. I'm just telling you straight. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's all bad. It's all bad. Now let's count the number of people. 1.5 million New York residents will lose their health coverage through Medicaid. Those are our friends, our family, our neighbors. But let me just tell you the statistics here in the Bronx. Right here in the Bronx, 107,000 people will lose their coverage. You're all going to know somebody. Now, where are they going to go for health care without this insurance? Oh, they're still coming here, but there won't be any way to pay for that. Christina, what does that do to the health of a hospital like this? That's unsustainable. And we'll keep you strong. But sure as I'm standing here, there's going to be hospitals all over the state of New York that are going to close, especially in our rural areas, up in the North Country. Those hospitals are already far apart. Imagine expecting a baby. Your child's in a car accident. You need to get to a hospital. And it's hours away because they had to close because of what Republicans who even represent that district have done. That's what we have to contemplate. And let's talk about another issue that's so important. Feeding children. And this is America. We're a very rich country, right? We should at least be able to feed our babies. And I've take this so personally. My daughter has a new baby, 5 weeks old yesterday. She sent me another picture today of her feeding the baby a little bottle. She doesn't have to worry about whether she can afford that formula because we can take care of it. But there's so many families across this great country who want to feed their children, but they're struggling. They didn't ask for a pandemic. They didn't ask for inflation. They didn't ask for tariffs to drive up the cost of everything. And by the way, what we promised, lower prices day one of the Trump administration? No. They're going way up. So my daughter can take care of her baby, but families here in the Bronx are going to be struggling because they count on the SNAP programs that feed our children and our families. So how cruel and depraved is it to not just take away a basic human right to have health care when you're sick and you need it, but also say, we don't give a damn if you go hungry either. Republicans in Washington have lost their soul. But here in New York, we have not lost our heart. We'll always care about people. We'll never give up on them. We'll fight back. We'll fight back hard. But it is also disgraceful. It is disgraceful that New York State has 7 Republican members of Congress whose job it is to go out there and fight for their constituents. Some in suburban areas, some in very rural areas. Your job is to represent those people and not do the bidding of a dictator like Donald Trump. But what do? Oh, they rolled, they caved, they didn't even put up a fight. And now one of them is actually running ads trying to persuade you how great this is. We're not stupid. We know the effects. There's no way you can say this is a good bill. It hurts people. And they missed their opportunity to show some profiles and courage. Any one of them could have stopped this from happening. Any one. All it took was one person to change their vote. They turned their backs on all of us. So now what do we have to deal with? Massive cuts. $13.5 billion cuts to health care in the great state of New York. Millions will lose insurance, will lose nutrition programs, or even hurt Planned Parenthood programs, which in some parts of our state, that's the primary health care provider for women. They don't care. And I'm just ticking off a few of them here today because we're at a hospital. But the effects of everything else is absolutely devastating. Now, I'm fighting hard. I've got my legislators. They know what we did. They helped me put money back in your pockets. We had a whole strategy last January, making New York more affordable because we know what's going on out there. People are working harder than ever before, and they're falling further and further behind. It's just not American. It's not what people came here for this country for, lived here, spent their lives here, making it a great place. They always think the next generation is going to do a little better than the one before. But the generation today is stuck. The chance of home ownership is impossible. Trying to get their own apartment seems impossible. And this is not their fault. What we did was he said, let's figure out a path. So for families with children under the age of 4, $1,000 tax credit for them starting in the next year. $1,000. Older kids, age 4 to 16, $500 in your pockets. It starts adding up for families. Let's put some money back in their pockets. Also, because there's so many children that need assistance paying for school lunches, those kids are stigmatized. They stand out. Everybody knows that they're the ones, the parents who can't afford to feed them, and so we have to. That creates a stigma for those children that lasts with them a lifetime. And why do I know that? I was on a Long Island talking about this. A Republican state senator came up to me, and he says, what you're doing by giving free lunches and breakfast to every child in the state of New York is transformational. And I was surprised to hear that. I said, why? He says, I was that kid. I skipped lunch every day because I was too embarrassed to get in the line for the kids with subsidized meals. And you're changing people's lives, giving them dignity back. So free lunches starting this fall, free breakfast, so no child will go hungry in our school system. So you can do what you want in Washington, but I'm feeding our kids. I fed kids my entire life. I'm a mom. I know how to feed kids. But also, how we open up doors of opportunity for people. One of them is a college education. Why do I know this? My parents used to live in a trailer park in the shadow of the Bethlehem steel plant where my grandpa worked, my brothers worked, my dad worked, his brothers worked. Everybody worked at the steel plant. A little tiny trailer. My dad, while he was working at the steel plant, was able to get a college degree at night. When he got that degree, he was able to start the path of getting his family, that little tiny apartment where I came along, and little houses, success. And I want that opportunity available to everybody. But cost of tuition is too high, right? You try to just pay your utility bills, pay the rent. Think about possibly money for education for your own kids. I want adults who really want to do something different with their lives, to better themselves, to have more income earning power, to have that shot without being strapped with the high cost of tuition. So that's why starting this fall, we worked together at the legislature. We got this done. Free community college tuition picked up by the state of New York and all the other expenses that go along with it for adults 25 to 55 going into key professions where we have shortages of workers. This also helps our employers. Healthcare. Christina, you have shortage of healthcare workers here? You're going to see a lot more people coming in your door when this happens. We already have actually no, the number is 16,000 people have signed up this fall already. And we're picking up that cost of tuition. I am so proud of that program. So here's what we're doing. We also have the inflation rebate. So people say, no, don't give that money back to the people of New York. Do something else with it. Really? You gone shopping at a bodega lately? Gone to a store? Trying to see a mom trying to be back to school shoes for the kids, little backpacks? You don't think they can use a few $100 this fall? $400 for most families? I think they do. You think they need that? Well, then tell everybody else, all those naysayers. Clearly, I don't listen to them. So, and then how about the largest middle-class tax rate cut in 70 years? So this is how we've figured out a path to put upwards of $5,000 back in the pockets of our hard-working New Yorkers. Now, I'm proud we got this done. This is great. But on the other hand, put money back in this pocket, the Trump tariffs and the cost of everything are driving everything up. People just aren't going to get ahead. So what do? We support our hospitals, our healthcare workers, our institutions. We'll do what we can. I'm working with our leaders in the legislature. We were making up $750 million in cuts this year alone. We weren't expecting that. I'd rather be able to give that money to Christina. I know exactly how she wants to spend it. She told me. She told me how she wants to spend this. We'll get you there. Not the $750 million, just part of it. She wants $14 million. Sure, let me check. Let me see how much I've got. Every time I come to the Bronx, I leave with my pockets lighter. I'm just telling you right now. You guys are so good. Listen, you had me at hello. I love you. So we're going to continue the fight. And for those who are giving up, saying, you know what, I just can't fight anymore, it's too much. History will judge us by how we stand up in this moment. And I want it to be said that New Yorkers stood up and fought back. We've been fighting our entire history, and we're not about to stop now. So let me bring up to you, my friends, another great fighter, a fighter for the Bronx, a fighter for our country. Let's hear from our Congressman, Ritchie Torres.
Governor, it's an honor to have you in the Bronx. I know Buffalo's your first home, but please consider the Bronx your second home. That's first, it's an honor to be here with Christina Contreras here at Lincoln. You know, Lincoln is the safety net of the Bronx. As Lincoln goes, so goes the Bronx. And I know every elected official is committed to the success of Lincoln. So, Christina, thank you for everything you do. Look, the presidency of Donald Trump represents the gravest threat to our democracy, our economy, and our social safety net. And now more than ever, every single one of us should stand with our governor in the fight against Donald Trump. Now is not the time for infighting. Now is the time for unity under the leadership of our governor, Kathy Hochul. And I'm here to repeat what the governor said. There is nothing beautiful about the so-called big, beautiful bill. In fact, the beauty of the big, beautiful bill is as fraudulent as Donald Trump himself. It is an assault on working people. It's going to cause 17 million Americans to lose health coverage, including more than 1 million here in New York. It will slash Medicaid by $1 billion, the largest health care cut in history. It will slash SNAP by $300 billion, the largest food assistance cut in history. It will raise the cost of electricity for American families and businesses, and it will add $4 trillion to our nation's debt. You know, here in the Bronx, we have people who live on $20 a day. And so Donald Trump and congressional Republicans are going to cut food, health care, and energy for those living on $20 a day in order to hand tax breaks to billionaires like Elon Musk, who has a net worth of $400 billion. And under Trump's legislation, and I'm not kidding, it is actually possible for a company like the Trump Corporation to buy a $400 million Qatari airplane, claim it as a business expense, and then completely write off the cost. So he's cutting health care and food, the essentials for working families, in order to subsidize luxury air travel for billionaires, for the top 1%. And it's often said that when America sneezes, the Bronx gets the flu. We are going to be hit the hardest by Donald Trump's savage cuts to food and health care. Right, 1/3 of the Bronx is enrolled in SNAP. And my congressional district, which is exclusively in the Bronx, has the highest rate of Medicaid enrollment in the country, 70%. In my district, more than 70% of children, more than 80% of nursing home residents, more than 90% of baby deliveries are covered by Medicaid. Medicaid is the air we breathe in the Bronx, and we will do everything we can to stand with Governor Hochul to defend it against Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump and his Republican co-conspirators here in New York and elsewhere would have you believe that a $1 trillion cut is all about removing fraud, waste, and abuse. Well, if that were remotely true, I have one question. Why would it be necessary for the congressional Republicans to set up a $50 billion stabilization fund for rural hospitals?
if it were all about fraud, waste, and abuse. The very existence of a stabilization fund is an admission that congressional Republicans are destabilizing our healthcare system. It's an admission that congressional Republicans are lying to the American people. And why is there only a $50 billion fund for rural hospitals? Why not for the hospitals here in the Bronx? Why not for Lincoln Hospital, which has the busiest single-site ER in New York City and the third busiest in the United States? Why is the Bronx being left behind? You know, Donald Trump came here to the Bronx to campaign. He stood in Crotona Park, which is about 1.5 miles away, and he promised to champion working families. And instead, he has betrayed them. But thankfully, we have a governor who is willing and able and has the courage to hold Donald Trump accountable for his betrayal of working families. And so, Governor, I want you to know we stand with you. The Bronx stands with Governor Hochul. Governor Hochul stands with the Bronx. Now more than ever, we have to defend our democracy because everything is on the line. And if we do not fight for the health care needs of the Bronx, then no one else will. The burden is on our shoulders. God bless you. Thank you.
Please welcome to the podium, Cassandra Howell.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Cassandra Howell, the Chief Operating Officer at Public Health Solutions, the largest public health nonprofit serving New York City. First, I want to thank Governor Hochul and Representative Torres for bringing us all together here today. Let's be clear. The passage of H.R. 1 is a direct attack on underserved families. Gutting essential programs to fund tax cuts for the wealthy. The first casualty is New York's Essential Plan. Our state stands to lose $7.5 billion in revenue, and then spend $2.7 billion more to push people onto Medicaid. Public Health Solutions has been connecting New Yorkers to critical services for over 65 years. WIC, SNAP, maternal health, sexual reproductive care, and health insurance. I grew up in a single-parent household in the South Bronx. I know personally how much these services matter. Through our health insurance enrollment programs, we help over 17,000 New Yorkers apply for coverage each year, helping to drive down the uninsured rates in the state. Because of these federal cuts, 224,000 people are set to lose essential plan coverage, most of them right here in New York City. 7 out of 10 New Yorkers can't get care without insurance. That's not wrong. It's a crisis. The harm doesn't stop there. Nearly 300,000 households across New York are projected to lose some or all of their SNAP benefits. That's $220 less per month for groceries. Take Miss A, a mother of 4 children, ages 5 to 16, and one of our program enrollees in Staten Island. She recently told one of our healthcare navigators that she worried that the new work requirements, combined with her ongoing immigration process, will likely hurt her family. Without SNAP, she feels that she won't be able to put food on the table. Miss A's story is not unique. Right now, 1 in 4 children in our state struggle to get nutritious food. And at PHS, we help thousands of individuals enroll in SNAP each year. But these federal cuts will push even more families to make impossible choices between food, rent, and medication. When the safety net is ripped apart, the burden falls on us, the nonprofit public health sector. We're ready to step up, but we can't do it alone. So here's our message to federal lawmakers. Fund what works, fund what saves lives, fund Medicaid and the community services New Yorkers count on. Don't dismantle the programs that keep families afloat. Instead, protect them, strengthen them. Because fighting for better health isn't politics, it's just common sense. Thank you. And I'm going to pass it over now to Sylvia Martinez.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to say thank you to our councilman, Congressman Ritchie Torres and Governor Hochul for this invite, and also Ms. Contreras for hosting us this morning. My name is Sylvia Martinez, and I am a long-term resident of the South Bronx, which is the highest asthma rate of New York City, but also of the United States. And Lincoln Hospital has been, I could say personally, my sister survived because of Lincoln Hospital of a bad asthma attack and was here housed for about a month and a half in the trauma unit. I am a member of Mothers on the Move for 23 years, and being on Medicaid has been an impactful source of medical resource for my family. My daughter was born with a cleft lip and palate, which is extensively expensive to have repairs done, alongside with my medical and dental issues. Being on Medicaid as a recipient has relieved many financial hardships, which I would face paying premiums out of pocket for my own necessities as my daughter. Medicaid is a vital program that brings peace and personal security, not just to myself, but many residents of New York State and other states within themselves, seniors, people in nursing homes, people that are bedbound, dialysis, and many other medical life security. Losing Medicaid would mean that I, just like many others throughout the United States, would suffer medical insecurity, but also show a lack of consistent, healthier medical care and need medications and would lack thereof. So they would have to decide whether they want to go to the doctor, get their medications, or even get care. Medicaid would be something life-saving, but also if you lack thereof, food insecurity will also not give you the balance of whether you're going to eat, pay for medications, pay for a doctor. It would be not sustainable in either way to get what you need. Because if you can't put food on the table, you can't eat properly, to take your medication, to do nothing thereof. Medicaid has been a sustainable source in my home, like many other homes in this community, not just for myself. My mother, who was on dialysis for a long time due to being a diabetic. My daughter's medical issues of 24 years, being born with a cleft patients to require a lot and extensive repairs. And I, as a recipient who lost her job due to health issues of my own, have that as a testimony. And I will fight with everyone involved to fight this fight until it's won.
That concludes our program. Thank you for attending. We look forward to seeing you again. Please get home safely. Safe travels.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Republicans often accuse Democrats of, quote, politicizing capitalism. So I have a simple question for the comptroller. Who's the most efficient allocator of capital, Donald Trump or the free market?
The free market.
Okay, because Republicans believe the answer to that question is Donald Trump. So it sounds to me like you're much more capitalist than your Republican critics. Republicans have no objections to socialism so long as it's Donald Trump doing the socializing. A wise person once said, if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're probably on the menu. And Rule 14A8 ensures that shareholders have a seat at the table. It promotes the democratization of corporate governance. It brings checks and balances, accountability, and transparency where none would otherwise exist. The purpose of securities law, as I understand it, is to correct information asymmetries and to level the playing field between issuers and investors. Comptroller Lander, do you worry, as I do, that the Stop Woke Investing Act would undermine the very purpose of securities law and radically restrict the flow of material information to shareholders?
Yes, I do.
And Republicans often accuse cities like ours, like New York, of, quote, woke investing. What were the most recent performance returns of the New York City pension system?
Let me get the numbers. We just announced at June 30th that for the year ending June 30th, we had one-year returns of 10.3%, exceeding the state standard of 7%, and saving about $2 billion for taxpayers.
So you saved $2 billion for taxpayers. And so under your financial stewardship, New York City has shown that it is possible to do well and to do good at the same time, that shareholder value and social responsibility can be mutually reinforcing. Now, under the Stop Woke Investing Act, the word material is radically redefined. It will no longer include, quote, any portion of financial risk that primarily relates to events that involve a high degree of uncertainty regarding what occur in the long-term future. And so with that definition in mind, I want to present the following hypothetical to you. I sit on the China Committee, and we in Congress have a bipartisan concern about rising tensions in the Taiwan Strait. So suppose I were a shareholder of the Taiwan Manufacturing Semiconductor Company, and I had a desire to file a shareholder proposal asking the company to disclose the possible impacts that an amphibious invasion would have on the advanced semiconductor supply chain in Taiwan. It would seem to me that under the Stop Woke Investing Act, my proposal would not qualify as material because it involves a high degree of uncertainty regarding what may occur in the long-term future. So let that sink in for a moment. An existential risk to the world's most critical and fragile supply chain would not qualify as material under the Stop Woke Investing Act. Is there any universe in which that makes sense to you as a fiduciary?
Investing is assessing risks exactly like this one, and I agree, as I read the bill, it would not allow you to ask a company where you were an investor to assess and disclose that risk to you.
Well, look, the cruel, almost Orwellian irony of this legislation is that the most material risk that a company can face, whether it be climate change or war, would no longer qualify as material under the law. And that, to me, makes a mockery of securities law. So I'm pleased, as a pensioner in the New York City system, I'm pleased with the 10% returns. Please doubling down on your winning strategy. I'll yield back.
Thank you.